economic risk and the political risk are bosom buddies. They are joined from the hip, really. In this case, although they work in tandem, but right now it's the political risk which have taken over the economic risks. And the political risk, not just the local political risk, is the regional and the international risk too. Political situation is emerging. Until these political risks are boxed in and settled down, the economic situation we can't see much progress on economics on the economic side. All our problem rests in our fiscal account. So the space to extend the subsidies, for example, to promote exports, which will eventually lead to taking care of our external account issues too, will only happen once your fiscal account is taken care of and sorted out. So therefore, it's in that context that I see things working out well, but with the caveat that we will have more clarity on this in the next 3-4 months. The starting point is to make sure that we increase our resources, taxation resources. The 3 big sectors which are not there right now, they have to be brought into the folds: retail, agriculture, and real estate. On the other hand, the wastage, and the biggest wastage to my mind, is in the subsidies. So I even go to the extent of saying that there shouldn't be any subsidies at all. We should finish all the subsidies, and especially the idea of subsidies extended through the trickle-down mode to direct subsidies. And the subsidies shall only be extended to 2 sectors. One, to the poor and vulnerable, using the NSCR and BISP scorecard. And even this whole idea of extending the subsidy through the electricity and gas bills is a flawed idea as well, because it has a lot of leakages. So give them the money directly, use the technology, and give them the money directly. And the second one is to make sure that your subsidies are only extended for the purposes of bringing in more export flows. And those export flows should be time-bound and performance-driven. The other important thing is to go for, private-public partnership arrangement. So all the program that we do under PSDP, Public Sector Development Program in the federal government, and annual development program in the provinces, these are all have to be done under the PPP mode. I think we can save something like 2.5 trillion rupees there. Our inflation is actually imported inflation, and it's deadflation. It's completely debt-driven because of the excessive money supply which is taking place, either in the monetary, either through the open market operations, or even otherwise in terms of deposit growth which is taking place, is all going towards funding the government deficit. And that, to my mind, is like printing of notes, which is the worst form of inflation. So you have imported inflation, you have deadflation. Let me just start out with breaking one myth, which is the fact that if digitization happens, then the currency in circulation will come down. This is not necessarily the case. In fact, if I were to quote you the example of India, India still has currency in circulation of 11% of GDP, same as ours. Although in their case, their total transaction through digital means is now 40%. And I'm talking about the entire, I'm not talking about banking sector, I'm talking about the entire e-commerce, commerce per se. $2.5 trillion of transactions are being done there. And 50% of these transactions are actually small transactions. Despite that fact, their currency is actually 11%. So it means that there is something more to it than the digitization alone. We need to do the digitization. We need to make it more palatable. We need to make it more affordable for people to adopt. But I think it is the fiscal side. Again, we are going back to the fiscal side again and again. It's the taxation piece, which is very important to be tackled to begin with. If you look at agriculture alone, it has a delta of $15 billion on our current account. If we'll be able to put our act together in terms of making sure that we are extended the targeted subsidies to the agriculture sector, I think the great opportunity exists there to make sure that our exports increase and our import indigenization also takes place in this sector. The second big opportunity, of course, we all talk about is on the IT side. IT side, again, we need to make sure that we extend what is necessary to the freelancers and to the possible companies which can come for outsourcing their businesses to us. Interestingly enough, on the same side, on the other side of the same page, you have the imports, and imports on the similar sector too. If you have put your act together, you will be able to reduce your imports, and you will be able to export, increase your entire equation could be changed upside down. %52% of our economy is essentially three sectors: agriculture, retail, and real estate. The contribution of retail is around 21%, 20.7% in our economy. It is in that way, in sub-sectors, it is perhaps the largest. And their contribution to the bank deposits is merely 5.8%. On agriculture side, if I were to divide it in two parts, the bigger part is the livestock part, which is around 13-14% of the total economy. Their contribution in the deposits is merely 0.3%. And the third one are the crop-related agriculture sector, which is around 7-8%. The contribution is merely 2% in our banking deposits. So obviously, from a financial inclusion standpoint, these sectors have to be tackled and dealt with to bring them into the financial sector. Some actions, as I told you, banks have to be taken, but this space, the government has to make certain serious decisions on the fiscal side, on the taxation side, to make sure that these people are forced to come into the net. We are, as bankers, not trained to deal with these difficult sectors too. Agriculture and SME, we don't. There is a different skill set which is necessary. There is a different mindset which is necessary, and there is a different set of risk appetite which is necessary to work with these people. We don't have the expertise to deal with them, and hence the result is that these sectors are falling behind. You see, the challenge is for us that, for example, in agriculture, and same holds true for SME as well, pretty much. But in agriculture, 79% of our farmers are below 12.5 acres of land. So they tend to remain, out of the financial inclusion space unless you make an effort to bring them in through the support of the government policy. And that's where another impediment is the government's fiscal space. I think the best way to go in order to tackle these sectors from a financial inclusion perspective is through promoting specialized institutions. Without specialized institutions in private-public partnership, it's better to do it in private-public partnership. But those institutions are necessary to take care of the financial inclusion piece in these sectors. On the gender side, 50% of our population is women, and their contribution, the overall labor force is merely 23%. The global average is around 38%. If we'll be able to get to the global average only, our GDP impact will be 1%. And when I look at the regional averages of education level of our women, the regional average is around 63%. Our average women education average is 46%. India is 93%, Bangladesh is 96%. So you can well imagine that this is a major impediment for them to come and work. If you look at the gender gap, global gender gap index report of 2022, we are at 146th out of 159, 145th out of 159 countries that are part of that index in terms of providing the opportunity women too. Islamic banking as an opportunity for business. Undisputed. Everybody wants to tap into this. Everybody wants to take the advantage, especially with the arbitrage in the saving rate of conventional banks and Islamic banks. This is an obvious opportunity. But then otherwise also, for example, if you look at the average current account balances, Islamic banks have 44%, conventional banks have 32%. So 32%. So therefore, it's an obvious opportunity which is out there and necessary for the banks to work towards it for a possible conversion. But then there are practical impediments on the way. If you look at the complexion of the banking industry, 83% of our funding is going to the government, which means that first the government has to convert into Islamic, and then perhaps the banking industry has to follow. Until the government converts it into Islamic, the banking industry can't do that in isolation. And the problem with the the government is that government does not have the assets to back this up. Either they come out with some kind of arrangement or structure whereby with the limited assets they'll be able to make them Sharia compliant, or they have to go for some kind of exemption for the time being until those assets are generated, and then work towards Islamic conversion. But that will all take time. So therefore, this timeline of 2027, to my mind, is a bit challenging one.